I'm Esther Dillard on the Black Information Network, chatting with writers and authors who offer an added perspective for our listeners. This is Color Between the Lines. 1, 2, 3, 4. In this edition of Color Between the Lines, we're speaking to an author, lawyer, and activist, Reginald Dwayne Betts. For several years, Betts has been on a mission to use literature to help those incarcerated in prison. This nonprofit installs what they call freedom libraries inside prison facilities. Betts is a poet who's written several books that reflect some of his challenges while in and out of prison. His books include the latest poetry collection, Felon, the Memoir, A Question of Freedom, and two previous collections of poetry. Shahid reads his own poem and Bastards of the Reagan Era. In 2019, Betts won the National Magazine Award in the Essays and Criticisms category for Getting Out, his New York Times Magazine essay that chronicles his journey from prison to becoming a licensed attorney. It's my pleasure to welcome Reginald Betts to the BIN.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. I visited your website, freedomreads.org, and I watched the video on how you gave back to a prison where you had spent some time. Can you share about how you got to prison and how books were a bridge for you to get out?
Yeah, it's interesting because I got to prison because I carjacked somebody. I was young and I just, when you're no longer young, I think it's easy to own that some things you do you don't have real explanations for. And it's kind of tragic though, because I read the news and sometimes it's 16-year-olds like me who have carjacked people, committed robberies, sometimes done worse things, and you see them, and as an older person who feels vulnerable sometimes, who has children, the impulse is not to extend any mercy or grace to those young kids. And I remind myself that I was that young kid. And so I carjacked somebody. I was arrested the next day. I pled guilty. I was sentenced to 9 years in prison. I did about 8.5. And books radically changed my life, which is to say that I had all of these ambitions about what I wanted to be in the world, college graduate, engineer, things like that. In prison, your world becomes constrained by barbed wire, by cells, by time, by violence. And I decided to be a writer, which felt like the biggest open door in the world for me at that time. And somebody had slid a book under my cell when I was in solitary confinement. It was The Black Poets by Dudley Randall. And at that point, getting that book made me shift and decide that I wanted to be a poet. And I became a poet. And so thinking about fast forwarding 20 years, 25 years, and thinking about the work I do now, is because I want to create that same kind of opportunity for others.
Really wonderful story. I wanted you to explain to me, you eventually you graduated from law school, Yale Law School. That's extremely impressive. Can you perhaps share some of the difficulties you faced given your history? I'm sure that it wasn't easy socially, academically. Did you get a lot of support there throughout your education? Just
It's
wondered.
you know, it's hard to talk about in some ways because I've been so successful that every time I talk about challenges, people think I'm just complaining. And but it's true that there are challenges. I didn't know what the word semester meant when I came home from prison. Within my first 30 days, I was at the University of Maryland trying to enroll, but it was March. And they were explaining to me that they had already made their admission decisions for the year. And I couldn't understand how that was plausible. I thought that a college was like 7-Eleven. You're open to serve people, and I'm here to be served. And you're telling me that you've already made decisions, not just for this entire class. And so that was one thing, just my lack of knowledge. And another thing was I went to community college, and you have to explain the time. You know, no matter how you present yourself, you'll get in situations where somebody's saying, well, you're smart. Why are you just showing up today? Or where were you yesterday? And if you just came home from prison, or if you've been in prison for 8 years like I had, all of my yesterdays were prison cells. And that is a challenge because I'm trying to get people in the world to see me as I see myself. but I've done nothing in my life to make them see me as I've seen myself. The men I served time with in prison see me the way I saw myself, but if you weren't there, you had no reason to see me that way. I had a full tuition academic scholarship to the University to Howard. And when I had to check a box, they took the scholarship from me. And they don't even want, nobody wants to acknowledge that that happened. And when I talk about it and they say, well, you're complaining, you just, you always want people to feel sorry for you. It's like, I don't give a, I don't want you to feel sorry for me. I got a degree from Yale Law School, but there are other people who got rejected, who dealt with some of these challenges, who weren't able to overcome them. And I'm sorry. It's okay to say I suffered and somebody should care. You know, it's okay to say I suffered and nobody cares, but to say I suffered, because part of what it means to be alive in the world is to be able to admit when you were hurt and to be able to admit when you hurt others. And so, I dealt with a lot of small grievances that I've been able to overcome that I tend to brush under the rug, because I have had more opportunities than a lot of people who have never gone to prison. I've had more opportunities than a lot of people who have hurt far less people in the world than me. And so I get some of the pushback against me voicing complaint. But I like to think when I voice complaint, it's not because I'm asking you for something. It's because I'm saying that there is a state of affairs in the world that, can only be made visible by people who live on the margins of success. And I live on the margins of success. It's a small fraction of people in this country who are lawyers, and an even small fraction of people who went to Yale Law School, and an even smaller fraction of those folks who have gone to law school and also gone to prison. And then a singular fraction of those folks who have gone to Yale Law School and gone to prison and went to prison when they were a teenager, right? And then it's only me who is also a poet. So I feel like, some of the voicing is not because of me. It's because I believe that my narrative is not just about me. It's about, everybody. So yeah, it's a few things I've gone through, but I also, married a woman who loves me. I have 2 children. My mama loves me and I have a lot of friends. And so I want to say all of those things as well.
The reason why I bring it up is because I used to teach at a college, and it was called a PWI, or predominantly Black college, PBI. And just like HBCUs, a lot of Black children and a lot of Black students who go there, they have difficulties that they're trying to overcome as far as their families and the family dynamic, and then moving to a whole new place and just trying to find their place and becoming an adult and everything else. And then you add on top of what you had to go through, it must have been even like compounded more. So that's the reason why I asked, because that's one of the things that we tried to at the college, is to try to make sure that students were supported so that they wouldn't fall out or drop out by, the end of the freshman year. They wanted to retain those students and hopefully get more first generation graduates from there. And that's the reason why I asked.
Yeah, no, it's real. It's real. And I do think that, and even Howard, I criticize Howard out, but there have been people who were in classrooms that I was invited to speak to who had criminal records. And again, a lot of times, some of the sort of decisions that administrations make are never about an individual person, but about the person making a decision. And we just need more systems in place to help decisions to become more fair and more transparent. I don't think that they denied me a scholarship out of spite. I think they denied me a scholarship because I might have been the first person who had that scholarship, and they just thought, I don't know what I should do. And it was easier for them to just do nothing. You know what I mean? So such is life. I can't assign my struggles to just racism, because it's been as often, my people who have been like, you are a carjacker. You know what I mean? Like I am not a carjacker. I mean, I did it once, but that's not me. It was a mistake. I'm somebody different. And they're like, nah, bro, there's, some folks have been like, nah, you are that forever.
Yeah, the labels. What gave you the idea to come back and create a library for prisons?
I thought it was cool. I honestly, books are fundamental to my life. Books have been fundamental to my experience of the world. And in prison, we are talking about maybe 15, maybe 20 years of work in this country on mass incarceration that has happened at the highest level of public discourse. There's been very little work that's happened at the level of discourse about the lives of people in prison. People will say things like, I don't work on conditions work. You're just going to put lipstick on a pig. Somebody said that to me once. You want to build libraries in prison? That's just putting lipstick on a pig. I was like, I did 8.5 years in prison. Where were you? Where were you when I watched somebody get stabbed up? Where were you when I was eating slop? Where were you when we were denied every form of intimacy that makes us human? And people would tell me, I don't support your libraries project because I don't support making prisons better. I'm like, you're not Jonathan Jackson, though. All you have is rhetoric. You're not running in the courthouses with machine guns, killing people, killing innocent people who should live. All you doing is talking, and you saying that like your talk is sufficient to change the circumstances of somebody who is struggling right now. And so my thing is, I wanted to think about what I could do to change tomorrow, while also recognizing that somebody right now is suffering and in need. And I love books. And so I was kind of self-interested. They might buy my books later. No, they probably won't. I give them the books for free. But like, I love books. And also I love community. The weird thing about prison is you read in isolation. The beautiful thing about college is all of a sudden, all of your reading and your thinking and your studying, it has the potential to be done in community. And so when you do more than just like, I don't just put books in people's hands and have them take them in themselves. We put these beautiful bookshelves that you can access from both sides and that are 44 inches high, which means that when I'm looking at the books, you're also looking at the books, but we're looking at each other. And we might have no other reason to talk. But now I see that you love Toni Morrison, and I want to talk to you about your love of Toni Morrison. And so I feel like the libraries are like opportunities, and they are opportunities for community. They are opportunities for mentorship. They are opportunities for just like a kind of a safe haven. People in prison respect university. I think people in prison respect certain kinds of spaces. The basketball court, the weight yard. And I want to make this library a place that people respect, a place that people go to discover each other. We've all, if you're an athlete, you've been on the court one day, like, damn, yo, dude, it's nice. She could play. I didn't know she could hoop like that. And now you're talking not just about hoops, but like, I think because you could play ball, you are generous. There's no reason to believe that. But, we've been in that situation where like you see somebody that could play ball like you and y'all go at it. And all of a sudden you think that makes y'all friends. And it does. I think the same thing can happen with books. I remember when a friend of mine said, this is the wildest, most incoherent thing anybody has ever said to me, right? I was talking about this book called The White Ninja. And if you like read a book called The White Ninja, this is just like purely pleasure reading, and it was this rain of books that's like thrillers. And it was generally about people from one culture somehow adopting another culture, and they trying to save people, right? And it's weird. You think a bunch of men in prison love books about somebody saving a day because nobody wants to just be like a convict. You want to be somebody's hero. So we talk about this book called White Ninja, and my man says, man, if you like the White Ninja, you will love Lord of the Rings. Now, if you read any book in this genre, this thriller genre, that's about like, martial arts, these two books have nothing to do with each other, right? But my man he hit me to the Lord of the Rings, and we became friends. And that's what a book could do. And I wanted to create that opportunity for other people who are currently in prison.
For those of you who are just joining us, I'm Esther Dillard, talking with author, lawyer, and education activist Reginald Dwayne Betts. He's talking to us about a project called Freedom Libraries, and so far, Mr. Betts has helped install dozens of libraries in prisons across the country. How many have you installed so far?
I'm gonna say scores. No, we did 80. We did a little over 80, and across 21 prisons. We just did 23 libraries across 2 prisons in California. The first prison we installed one in is we opened one in MCI Norfolk, where Malcolm X served time. The second was Angola and Louisiana State Prison in Louisiana. And since then we have stretched out to like Rikers, several other prisons in the state of New York, Colorado, California, the aforementioned California. We're also in Maine, and we're in Connecticut. So, also Illinois. We're in men's prisons, we're in women's prisons, we're in juvenile detention centers. Actually, talk about it. I realized I'm actually pretty proud of the work that we've done. And I don't, I'm not trying to, I am humble, but I am just saying that like, and most of us have never opened up 500 brand new books at one time. And so the people in prison are actually experiencing a kind of joy that unless you worked at a bookstore, you've never experienced. Like 500 new books. I mean, it's literally like Christmas in January. It's like Kwanzaa in December, November. Everybody's just experiencing this, and people smile. I mean, I've done a lot of stuff in my life actually, but I think this is probably the thing that I'm most proud of because it's also introducing people to writers, man. I mean, sometimes my closest friends were Yusef Komunyakaa, Toni Morrison. And I read Paradise twice before I understood it. Gwendolyn Brooks, Trevanian. I just read Shibumi for the second time a little while ago, but I wear glasses. I'm damn near blind without my glasses on. And when I got locked up, I didn't have my glasses on, my contacts.
Oh, no.
And they brought the book cart around. And you imagine surviving prison as 5'5", 120 pounds, and you can't see. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And they brought the book cart around. I was like, man, and I knew that I didn't want to reveal that I couldn't see anything. And also I only had a second to choose a book. And I was like, let me get that one. And it was just like all black and I couldn't see anything. And it was Trevanian. And it was such a good book. And it was about morality. And it was about, I learned how to play Go from the book. But I also learned what it meant to be. In some ways, I was reminded of what it meant to be a thoughtful human being and what it meant to owe somebody something. And this was a thriller. It wasn't literature. It wasn't like a classic book, but it was like, it didn't just get me through my days. It gave me something. I still remember some of the lessons of that book.
You talked a little bit about the design and showing the design. There's a connection to Martin Luther King Jr. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so we were trying to think about what they would look like, and we went through like, would it be on the walls? And we decided to create a design that was curved and arced, thinking about Martin Luther King Jr. and saying the arc of the universe is it bends towards justice. And so we wanted to create a design that sort of represented that arc and to bring a little bit of a notion that we're moving towards a justice in this system.
If somebody would like to help in expanding this wonderful project, what do they do?
First, they could go to freedomreads.org, and it's freedom, FREEDOMREADS.org. They could check out our work. They could donate. They could donate $5. It was somebody that gave us $5 a month, a $5 bill. They would mail us a $5 bill every month, and we are deeply appreciative of that $5 bill. And they could give us $10, $100, $1,000, $5,000, $10,000. They could give us $1 million. It's wild that some people in the society have millions and millions of dollars at their disposal. And if they choose to do us a solid and support this work with their resources, we would deeply appreciate it. But also, if we're in a community where you are, and we will be, because we're going to be all across this country, you can support us by following our work, rating us, and becoming a Freedom Ambassador, which is, when you go to a prison and you build 18 libraries, that's 4,000 books. We need people to open up those boxes and put the books on shelves and to be in community, even if just for one day, with the men and the women and the children who are currently incarcerated. But I think those are the two, primary things, like three primary things. Follow our work, tell your friends about our work, donate money to the degree that you can. And if you had an appetite for it, reach out to us and ask to be an ambassador. A lot of times you go into a prison as a voyeur. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm asking you to understand what it was like for my mom to come in to see me. But instead of just coming in to talk to somebody you love, come in to see some strangers and help, stock shelves with books and bring some light and some joy and some hope to people.
That's Reginald Dwayne Betts, Director of Freedom Libraries. Thank you again for sharing with us your story and your fabulous project.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
That's it for this edition of Color Between the Lines. I'm Esther Dillard on the Black Information Network.